Hello.
Hello, hi. I'm trying to figure out how to get the people in the waiting room in.
It just let me in. I was in the waiting room too.
I believe I have to click. Oh my God. Hi.
Hello.
I found the frame.
Father Hall.
In my study.
Father Hall, how are you? Can you hear me?
Good. How are you doing?
Long time no see.
Yes, I can.
Thank you so much for
I know. I'm
coming.
ready. I'm ready to have my heart stretched and moved to emotional plateaus this evening.
I think that's going to happen.
Oh, all right.
That's my
Looking
goal.
forward to it. Looking forward to it.
I'm waiting a few minutes because there are a couple more people who are supposed to join, so I want to give them a chance to connect if they're
Sure.
having any trouble. If not, then we'll just go ahead and start. And it's nice to see you.
Hi. Good to see you too.
Like I know you, but I've never actually seen you before. And Sashili, you're a student of my husband's?
Hi, Miss Celia. Sashley. I'm not a student, professor.
Oh, wow, professor. Good to
Yep.
meet you.
Good to meet you. I've heard wonderful stories about your babies.
I bet you have. Hi, Joe.
So Celia, where are you located physically, geographically? Are you in
Miami,
Florida?
Florida.
Okay.
Miami, Florida. I think that's long enough to wait. I think there's one person who didn't make it. Okay, so formally, hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you very, very much for being here. You have no idea how much it means to me. It means to me more to see just a few of you here than if it were 500 people, because I know that those of you who are here really, really want to be here. And that means a lot to me. So thank you very, very much. To give you a formal introduction, my name is Celia Lisette Alvarez, and I'm the editor of Prospectus. We're going to be at AWP tomorrow. Can you see my AWP teacher? We're going to be at AWP tomorrow in the community book fair if you want to pass by and take a look at the journal. And I am also the author of Multiverses, which you have come here tonight to find out about. I need to give you a little bit of background about the book before I start the reading. The book is a memoir. I'm calling it a speculative memoir in verse. And the memoir part comes from the fact that it does cover a period of 4 years of my life in which I narrate true events. And these events, I feel I should give you a trigger warning. These events were not pleasant in any way. My husband and I were struggling with infertility. And in 2015, I miscarried at 5 weeks. And that was extremely disappointing and hurtful and difficult to deal with. It was my first pregnancy ever, so it was pretty devastating. But then in 2016, I miscarried again, and this time it was at 11 weeks. We were already planning what to call the boy. We were going to call him Arturo. Arturo, after my uncle, actually my mother's uncle, which makes him my granduncle. But anyway, he was kind of like a grandfather figure to me, but more than that, he was a best friend. I absolutely adored him. So did my husband. And we wanted to name our son after Arturito. Arturito is the diminutive of Arturo in Spanish. So that was a devastating loss. And then in 2017, we were blessed with the birth of our daughter, Lucy, who is just sunshine and joy and happiness every single day. She's about to turn 4 now in June. And we were so happy that we said, let's try to squeeze one more in, because I'm older than dirt. So we needed to do it super fast. So we tried again, and boom, twins. We were told we were having twins, a girl and a boy. And we were ecstatic. I mean, here we were, the couple in their 40s who wasn't supposed to have any children. And all of a sudden, we were going to have this big family of 3, 2 girls and a boy. We were super happy. Everything went really well. When I reached the 24th week, that's Florida viability, meaning that the babies could survive outside the womb if anything should happen. So I threw myself a little party in my head, yay, anything can happen now, everything's okay. 3 days later, my water broke and I went into early labor. And I spent 3 weeks in the hospital trying to delay the labor to see if they could reach the magical 28 weeks. Apparently at 28 weeks, something happens to their lungs that makes it a lot more probable that they will survive. But at 27 and a half weeks, the cramps began and I went into labor and they couldn't stop it. And my twins were born perfect. They were just about 2 pounds, but they were perfect. I remember in my fog asking my husband 10 fingers, 20 fingers and 20 toes, and he said yes. And they were doing great. For 26 days, we went to the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, and we spent day and night with them. We saw them progress from one breathing machine to another. Everything was looking great. And then on the 26th day, we got a phone call early in the morning, and the doctor said, the baby has taken a turn for the worse. And he meant my son, Arturo. So we rushed to the hospital, and he had some kind of infection that they didn't know where it was coming from and what kind of infection it was. And it wasn't responding to any kind of antibiotic that they could administer. And within 24 hours, he was gone. He was gone. So I lost my son in 2018. My daughter survived. She's beautiful now. She has Um, no mark of having been born under such circumstances. She's going to turn 3 very soon. So after we came home, we thought, okay, well, this is our time to grieve and to try to move forward for the sake of our girls. And then my father started acting funny, and he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And the doctor told us, well, don't worry too much, because at 86 years old, something else is bound to take him before the Alzheimer's does. So we said, okay, let's see what this means. And sure enough, in 2019, we lost him. So within the course of 4 years, I had 2 miscarriages, a wonderful baby girl. I lost my uncle, I lost my son, and I lost my father. And one thing that kept me going throughout all these losses was thinking of what if? What if this had happened instead of that? And I started thinking of the multiverse theory. I'm no physicist. I can't explain to you the particularities of the multiverse theory. I can explain to you the Star Trek version, which means that there are parallel universes to our own in which we all exist, but there might be variations. Tonight I might be wearing a yellow t-shirt instead of a pink one, and somehow that will make a difference in the events that follow. So I started fantasizing about, what if my son had lived? What if my uncle had gotten to meet my children? What if my father had lived? And believe it or not, these fantasies were comforting. So when the pandemic hit, I started writing, and I started initially to write a memoir, but the fantasies kept haunting me. And I said, okay, I'm going to write these down too. So Multiverses is a braid of different narratives, some of which are true and some of which are not. So tonight I'm not going to tell you which is which. I want to keep you disoriented and unhappy. So I'm going to just read to you the poems as I see them, and hopefully you will like them. So let's see. I'm going to begin with version 1.0. The poems are all titled version 1 point something, 2 point something, 3 point something, depending on which line of the narrative it is. So this is version 1.0. In the NICU, they try to reassure me with stories of babies born at 23 weeks who have survived, just like you and I. No mark of this struggle of wires and buttons, dials and digital heartbeats. Born at 27 weeks, Arturo is more fetus than baby. I gasp the first time I see them, my twins, Arturo and Sarah. In the violet light of the incubator, I struggle to make out the color of their hair or their eyes. The only way I can tell them apart is that Sarah's hat has a jaunty bow. Try to remain positive, they say. They let me change their diapers. Arturo's eyes slit slightly open, flash of black, amphibious. I give him the tip of my finger, and his hand curls around it like a kitten's paw. He is intubated, the tape covering his lower face like a mask. His chest is covered by sensors. Even the preemie diaper reaches to his armpits. All that I can see, because they cannot cover it in order to have a place from which to draw blood, is his left foot, a bulbous big toe standing straight up in the air, just like mine, just like mine. This is my son. Even when the crash cart comes in, even when I can no longer tell which doctor can save him, I believe that things will turn around. When the beep of his heartbeat goes silent, I clutch my husband and watch my son turn purple, beginning with his toe. This is my son, I say to myself, when I can finally hold him, free from tubes and tape. I think of the multiverse theory, wondering what version of me can hold him alive and breathing. What version of me can take him home, can watch him grow? Sarah's hair is golden, her eyes a streaming blue river. She squeals with laughter as my mother makes her airplane sounds with her spoon. I think of that version of me where there are two toddlers, skin so white you can see their map of veins. I trace Sarah's blue highways to her big toe, bulbous, alert, ready to spring into action. Now I'm going to read to you version 2.0. The nurses clap and cheer as I exit the NICU, a baby in each arm and one behind. Now big sister Lucy, still just one. We've gone into debt to buy a Honda Odyssey, the only minivan to fit comfortably 3 car seats. I wait by the curb on the street, pink and blue balloons bouncing from my wheelchair, and Raphael pulls up, the proud papa, takes a picture of us before we struggle to get each baby in a car seat. The Montes Mobile, we will call it, as well as a 3-seat stroller I spent months researching, finally settling on a train, figuring that a side-by-side would not maneuver well down the aisles at Publix, where little hands would reach to grab a bright box of cereal. As we exit the hospital, I look in the rearview mirror, see the lunch lady that was so nice, and I turn towards the road home, only green lights ahead. And behind me, a cacophony of cries I will have to find a way to soothe. Anxious and weak, I breathe in the whispering air of the new van and wonder what version of me will be capable of such work. How will we eat? How will we sleep? How we will bathe? How will I coordinate such need? Too many questions. I settle into the bucket seat of the van, try to stockpile the comfort I know I will lack in the coming years. A mixture of fear and joy propels us into our cramped home, where every corner will soon be covered with toys, diaper boxes, teething rings, and pacifiers. Okay, now I'm going to read to you a couple of poems after we bring my daughter home, when we start to notice that my dad is acting strangely. Version 1.2. My father wants to be with the girls all the time, even though Lucy can't stand to be contained in her walker anymore, and he's too afraid to pick up Sarah. Lucy climbs on the back of the sofa and my mother screams. There is a lot of screaming. Soon after, we find out my dad has Alzheimer's. Not even mild, but sort of mid-range. The neurologist insists we shouldn't worry. At his age, something else will take him before it gets bad. I wonder what that could mean, and soon I get an answer. He becomes paranoid. We are conspiring against him to keep the girls away, which is true, since he's taken not to bathing or changing his diaper, the result of years of incontinence. He believes we are taking his money, and he threatens to cash in his life insurance and get us all. I start to talk about lawyers and legal forms to render my own father incompetent. Nevertheless, Lucy loves him, her pop-pop who watches cartoons in Spanish with her and attempts to read her books. I notice he has trouble remembering words. Plane, he says, pointing at a picture of a bird. He almost faints during Sarah's first birthday party. I blame the beer and margaritas he's been chugging, he thinks, behind my back. There is a picture of all of us with him seated, his head leaning against my arm. My lips are pursed, furious. He is ruining the Cinco de Mayo themed party I've been planning for months. With a memorial mass for Arturito in the morning, hardly anyone attends. How come we can never take one of those family portraits where everyone's eyes are open and no one is forcing a smile? Is there no fixing us? I wonder how far back we'd have to go to reach the point where everything went wrong, where we deviated to this place, where I sit crying in the bedroom alone, eating a stale piece of cake. This is version 1.21. I catch my father giving Lucy a bite of his ham sandwich. Papi, I scream, how many times must I tell you we are vegan and plan to raise the girls to be as well? It's just a little piece, he says. And I go on a rant. It's a matter of respect. You don't respect our choices, just like you don't respect our privacy. He's been peeking through the curtain on the French door that separates our side of the house from theirs, trying to get a glimpse of the girls when they are with us. Meanwhile, Lucy chews and smiles at her pop-pop as I whisk her away, furious, too furious really, this one piece of ham carrying the weight of my whole upbringing, of an entire lifetime of peeking through my curtains and questioning my choices. Just before I get to the door, I put Lucy down and easily rip off the curtain, a flimsy, dirty thing I had once helped my mom put up myself with 2 simple rods and 4 small screws. There, I think. Now there'll be no more peeking, no more pretending that there's some kind of boundary to our daily lives. I put Lucy in the crib next to Sarah and cry miserably on the bed, just like I did that night when I was 15 and they wouldn't let me go out with George Guerrero. I marvel at the time tunnel I've created, the Charybdis that has swallowed me, the open maw of the NICU doors. You try to swim against the current, exhaust yourself, and die. Lucy's large enough to scramble out of the crib. I find her face and hands pressed against the door, my father on the other side, blowing kisses at each other while Lucy cries, pop, 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 pop. Now I'm going to read to you a couple of poems about my uncle Arturo that I was telling you about, whom I loved so much. Right after Lucy was born, I tried to go see him. He used to live in North Carolina, and he didn't let me because she was too small. This is version 0.5. But Arturito, I argue, it's really no big deal. Lucy is 2 months old and more than ready for her first plane ride. No, he argues. You can't put a baby on a plane at that age with all those germs in the recirculating air. I will see you in March when you come visit me in Sarasota. Besides, do you know how much the plane ride is from Miami to Raleigh? No, absolutely not. Which is when I should stop arguing, because I know that when he gets to absolutely, there is no moving him. I could drive to Orlando where we can stop for a breath. An interstate drive with a baby, he asks? That's not safe. I'm beginning to think you don't want to see me. No, Lisette, a name only family calls me. How could you think such a thing? Don't you want to meet Lucy? Oh, for heaven's sake, I can hear his wife Lois say. Babies aren't even that interesting at that age. She's being crazy. You're being crazy, Arturito says to me, and I know the battle is lost. School starts in August, and Lucy will go to daycare while I go back to work. I will have to wait until spring break to see him. He didn't make it to spring break. This is version 0.60. I'm in the middle of feeding Lucy when I find out. Raphael says, your cousin Kathy called. Arturito fell, and he's been in the hospital for 2 weeks. They think this is it. I need to see him, I say, even though it's the beginning of the semester, and I have no idea how to handle it at work. Raphael makes it happen, and $5,000 later, I'm in a rental driving to the hospital. When I get there, he is yellow. He looks already dead. The trail of liver spots down his neck is the only thing I can recognize as him. My cousin Randy is the optimist. He's being moved to a less critical room, and the neurologist is hopeful. What they cannot understand is why he seems to have lost his mind, unconscious most of the time and incoherent the rest. There is no way to get him to eat. I see Lois in the hallway, and for the first time, she really looks 90. The next day, Arturito recognizes me. How is Panchito, he asks, as if this were a perfectly social visit. He's well, I lie, and show him pictures of Lucy. I remember that day, he says, looking at a picture of her on the beach. He is confusing her with me. We bring him more photo albums from home and play him songs from Cuba. Sometimes he recognizes people and even remembers lyrics to the tangos he so loved. At night, he takes to ripping off his clothes and trying to set himself free of the tubes around his body, the most dangerous of which is the Foley catheter that he already pulled off once a long time ago, the first time he fell, and they had to drill holes in his head to drain out the blood. Since then, his favorite activity was forcing you to touch them. See, I have holes in my head, he'd say, as if they were new. There's no such cure this time. 4 days pass and I must go back to work. I'm hopeful because he's sat up and shaved his beard. The familiar buzz of the electric razor taking me back to those summer mornings he would stay with us in Miami. I'd know he was up because of that buzz, and every day with him was fun. The beach, dominoes, movies, push rummy, later drinking martinis and listening to Carlos Gardel and Edie Gourmet. When I tell him I'm leaving, he gestures, "Come on, let's go," as if I could take him with me. It's an early Sunday morning when I get the call. He passed away around 3 a.m., my Donald says. No family at all. Que se quede el infinito sin estrellas, o que pierda al ancho mar su inmensidad, pero el negro de tus ojos que no muera, y el canela de tu piel se quede igual. Those were some of his favorite lyrics. Okay, so now I'm going to read to you a series of poems that I wrote before Lucy was born, when I had my miscarriage. Originally, this was titled 5 Weeks, but now it's titled version 0.44. According to the doctor, you were nothing but a chemical mass of cells, not even really an embryo. Failure, rejection. Did you have a soul? Was that soul inside me the night we went looking at the graffiti murals in Midtown? Were there two of us walking in the dark, gazing up at the dazzling walls, marveling at the depth and breadth and height, monstrous men and women, geometric figures, homages to Wilma Flintstone, LeBron James, and Bob Marley? A cement block geography of pop, Miami's pink guts rendered in swathes of primary colors and tagged indecipherably by artists smart enough to know that what matters is the art. What part of you is visible in the picture we took in front of the 10-foot insect woman, tendrils of her hair glistening in silver spray paint under the streetlights? I search my face, my picture smile, always so contrived. Is there some trace on my lips of you? A seed already curling into a tadpole? The baby website says you had a dividing heart, chambers getting ready to beat and pump blood. I had signed up for the November birth club, and they still send me their hapless bulletins, trying to tell me what's going on in my uterus this week. How much of you is left in me now that I've bled out your non-life, non-soul, chemical self? When I go back to Midtown, the insect woman mural is gone. Some robot future in blacks and reds in her place, some dystopian vision. They do that sometimes, paint over the murals. No trace left of the art underneath. That other painter who spent God knows how very long dreaming, planning, measuring, coloring the vast canvas of the city, and then standing back, maybe only for a moment, in that mute blush of satisfaction, invisible in the deep, black, empty night. This version is called version 0.45. Don't write about the moon. No one wants to hear such triteness. How these images the doctor hands me of my uterus, these mauve circles on a black background, could be night scenes, blood moons, romantic or gothic. Now everything inside me is clean, sterile. I am a perfect before and after. A pink wash trickles down my legs in the shower. I am ready to be new after the bleeding. Don't write about the moon. No matter how tempting the similarities, the waxing and the waning, the constant pulling out into space. No one wants to hear about how I feel, tethered to something far away and cold, airless, how it calls me. This is why wolves howl, why it bothers us even when we know that we are safe, that no one's coming for Red Riding Hood or the Three Little Pigs. No one wants to hear these henny penny complaints about how the moon might come crashing down someday, a fiery ball in the sky no one will anticipate. And the last poem in this sequence is called Aholote. It's after Julio Cortázar's story, and it begins with an epigram from the story. Los ojos de los ajolotes me decían de la presencia de una vida diferente, de otra manera de mirar. This grief has separated us. I have mutated like a fish, grown gills to breathe this toxic air. How ghastly. You cannot understand why I will not cover them. Why, in fact, I stretch my neck like a balloon, miles above you. I say the air is thin here, full of moisture. I see you mouthing a reply down there, flailing your arms, unrecognizably small. For my birthday, you have bought me a bright blue scarf. It is the gift of a child or a stranger, someone who does not understand my world, my new biology. It's not your fault. You are basically a pack animal. Did you not think me one of you still, I would be in danger. I see you checking in on me, my anxious nurse. I'm none too sure what prognosis you think best. Should I perfect these neat new lungs, we will cease to understand each other. You will look into my gold transparent eye and see no soul like yours. Should I reject them, however, I might die, strapped to some machinery. I can almost picture it, your funhouse face, nose and chin flattened against the window of my aquarium, one finger tapping on the glass like an exotic visitor. Okay, I'd like to stop there now and see if you have any questions that you would like to ask. Sashi Lee, you look so scared. It's okay. You don't have to ask a question if you don't want to. Let me see if there's something.
No, I was laying down with my eyes closed. I love how you use words to just paint these pictures. So I wanted to really concentrate on the journey that you were taking us on. You are so brave. Like, there's so many things that I'm still afraid to write about, and you just, whoo.
Yeah.
There was the one poem that you were talking about, coming from nothing to being, and then from being going back to nothing. The one with the cells, I think it was in the second section. Could you talk to us a little bit more about that, please?
Well, that was the poem about the so-called chemical pregnancy that I had. And they call it that because the baby's heartbeat has not begun beating, so they don't consider it a true pregnancy. And to me, that was so devastating because for me, that was a true pregnancy. You know, that I was expecting to have a baby. I had dreams, and I, was picking themes for the nursery already. I couldn't understand why my miscarriage wouldn't even be acknowledged as a miscarriage. So I thought about, these cells, where do they go? Are they, it's not, when you have a miscarriage that early, it's not like when you have it, like for example, when I had the other one at 11 and a half weeks, it was very traumatic. It's kind of like giving birth. So it's very painful, and there's a lot of blood and other things involved. But a miscarriage at 5 weeks is almost undetectable, so I kept thinking, where did those cells go? Is this child part of me now? And I'd like to think, yes. I'd like to think that he or she, whatever they were going to be, is still with me somewhere, if not physically, then spiritually, and is part of our story and our family, even though he or she never made it into the real world. So
Thank you. I know that was difficult, and I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing with us.
no, thank you. It is very difficult to write about these things. It was a very strange experience. When I started writing, I was very detached from what I was writing. It was really the only way to do it, but I felt compelled to do it. What happens when you grieve, and I'm sure, all of us have had experiences in which we grieve, is that at some point people think that you are over it, and even though they might say things like, of course you never get over it, they expect you to be over it. And then they stop talking about the missing person, the loss. And you're there with this ball of grief stuck in your throat and no place to release it. So I released it on paper. It wasn't cathartic because, like I said, I was very sort of detached from the experience, but it was a way for me to talk about what I wanted to talk about without hurting anybody, especially my husband, who shared in my pain all the while. If he was coping in his own way, I didn't want to interrupt that process by, constantly reminding him of these images that kept just punching into my brain. So the paper received all of that. Well, the keyboard, really, I should say at this point. I'm talking as if we weren't in the computer age. The keyboard received all of that information instead of someone else.
And I will forever and ever tease him about his now Montez Mobile. That was fabulous.
Well, we found a double stroller instead, and we did call it the Montez Mobile anyway, believe it or not, because it is. We still have it, although at this point I don't think either one of my girls needs it. But I mean, what do you do with that? It's a huge, unwieldy contraption. And the few times we used it, there was really no place that we could take it, that we could maneuver it very well. So that was kind of a disaster, the Montez Mobile. Yeah. So
I wanted to say that I really can, I think, understand and appreciate your use of the multiverse theories. They're scientific theories, I guess, relating to death, and kind of, I'm assuming you're thinking, kind of like where one aspect of that person, even if it was a fetus, where they went. There's another, I don't think it's a theory, I think it's pretty much true, of how our solar system travels through the universe. And it's a really cool image where the sun is in the middle, and then the planets rotate, as we know, but it's this particular graphic is of the whole universe. I mean, our whole galaxy, not universe, our whole galaxy going in a spiral just into infinity. And after my husband died, I really latched onto that image, and it was helpful, you know, just to think of him and, you know, us, everybody. And I too had 2 miscarriages and difficult pregnancies and a mother who developed dementia, and so some similar experiences. And for me, that image of the rotation of the galaxy hurtling into infinity was very soothing to me, still is. You know, it's just kind of a different way of thinking about an afterlife, you know, and going on and on and on and on and on. So, you know, I appreciated your multiverse images.
I'm sorry that you had those similar experiences. You know, I know how difficult it is. The infinite universe theory, I think, is what they call it. You know, that we are constantly expanding. That's very comforting, you know, because we are never diminished. We are constantly expanding.
Right. Yeah.
So this energy, wherever it is that it comes from, whether it's God or you know, the stars or whatever you would like to think, is something that multiplies instead of becoming smaller. So it is a comforting thought, you know. And a lot of people would say, well, you know, psychologically speaking, that's not very healthy. It sounds a little bit like PTSD. And it is actually, you know, because part of me will always be in that room where my son died.
Sure.
When I exited that room, I exited a different person.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's anything that can be fixed. So
I don't think. Hi, I'm Christine. I'm an anthropologist, poet. I think PTSD is when you just have no control over it, and I feel like you've found a way, to a healthy way, to integrate it into your experience, all of these experiences, into the larger arc of your experience. And actually, what you've done with these narrative poems reminds me of a dream I had the other night that I'm probably going to write a poem about. But in the dream, I had part of my leg cut off, but I had to get to a particular place. And so in my dream, I just imagined the leg was there and then I could walk. And I feel like your poems are this act of imagination that allows something, it seems to me, I mean, I've just met you, but it seems to me it's allowed you to move forward in a healthy way, that you're raising your girls, and you know, it's like you're not stuck.
Yeah, I had that same feeling, Celia. I too wondered about you're saying about PTSD. Other than, I mean, it sounds like you keep revisiting that you know, that grief, whatever, but it really hasn't even been that long, actually.
no.
And again, because I had some similar experiences, I can absolutely, still to this day, and it was 35 years ago when I had my miscarriages, I still think about it every once in a while. It's not ever gone.
I'm still grieving an experience from 40 years ago. So
Yeah.
I think you're doing it right. And it's a beautiful thing that you've offered to the world. I can't wait to get the book.
Me too.
Well, remember that you don't get it until after May 7th.
I know.
So
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
I wanted to make that clear.
Do we get a little signature?
Definitely, of course.
Oh,
That's
good.
the whole point.
Woo!
So one of the reasons why because writing a book and publishing it are two different things. I was compelled to write the book, but then when it was finished, I could have chosen not to publish it. And in fact, that was a very difficult decision because many times I thought, this is too personal, this is too graphic, who's going to want to read this, and why should I reveal such intimate feelings and events to the world? But one of the things that tipped the scales towards publishing for me was the miscarriage issue. Nobody talks about it. 1 out of every 4 pregnancies ends in miscarriage, and you hardly ever hear that kind of talk. I was wholly unprepared for my first miscarriage
Mhm.
and my second one. Even after I had the first one, I still thought that the second pregnancy was going to be fine, you know,
Mhm.
because especially when you're on an infertility treadmill and trying to get pregnant and trying to get pregnant and trying to get pregnant, you think that once you're pregnant, your troubles are over, you know, and no doctor tells you that, no Pampers commercial, no, you know, friendly aunt, no distant cousin, nobody tells you that 1 out of every 4 pregnancies before the second trimester. I think that that's important to talk about and to prepare women for, so that you don't feel like you're broken, like there's some, my obsession was there's something wrong with me, you know. This is especially when it happened the second time. I thought, it's
Yeah.
me, you know, what's wrong with me? Should I even try to get pregnant again? I mean, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
But that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's
I always felt badly for my husband too, because I mean, not only the whole experience, but everybody said, "Oh, I'm sorry," to me, the mother, and barely acknowledged that it was his loss too, you know, his children who died too, you know, and I always felt badly about that, because the man, you know, the father doesn't get acknowledged nearly as much as the mother
that's also
for a
true
miscarriage.
for a miscarriage, and for the loss of a child, of a baby, you know. Especially when we lost our son, I received a lot of support, and people just that I didn't even recognize gravitated towards me and hugged me and gave me condolences. And I remember many times having my husband standing next to me, and nobody paid any attention to him
Right,
whatsoever.
right, right.
And it hit him really badly. He hasn't read this book, and he says he might not be ready to ever read it. And I'm okay with that, you know,
Yeah.
because he has to do his own thing, and this is my way of coping with the situation, and I understand his way of coping it as well, you know. Again, might be denial, might be might be unhealthy, but it's what gets him through the night. And sometimes that's all you have to do, get through one night at a time.
I
You know,
also,
I'm sorry. When you were talking about your grandfather's passing,
Mm.
that reminded me a lot of when I sent my wife back to the U.S. We were living in Japan at the time, and I remember going through and preparing her for that long trip to go through that emotion. I'm like, man. And as you're reading your poem, I can kind of relate, and it's good to get that out there.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was like time travel in a way, because when I got there, I didn't quite recognize the the uncle that I knew and loved, you know. And when we discovered that he reacted to pictures and music from the past, it was like, you know, this vacuum of time had suddenly occurred, and we were in 1940s Cuba and listening to tangos and, you know, looking at pictures of people who had died decades ago. So it was a very disorienting experience, and having to have left, at the time I was a teacher, so having to have left knowing that he was not going to make it, but not being able to be there for his death was very, very difficult to do. I had to sort of trick myself into thinking that maybe he was going to be okay, in order to be able to come back to work before I lost my job. So, but I'm glad that I had the opportunity to see him one final time, and at least show him pictures of my daughter, even though he thought that it was me. So that was another sort of twist
Yeah.
in the time.
Joe sent me, it was a day and a half of travel to get from Japan to Florida. And I got there and she passed away the next day. Like, that's like, it was literally like skin of my teeth that I was able to make it.
It was like she was
And it was,
waiting for you.
yeah. And it was because of him that I was able to.
I'm so grateful to my husband for making that work for me. And the poem, I said, you know, $5,000 later, and it's just a few words, but it took a huge effort on his part to find me an emergency plane ticket and to find the money to pay for it and to figure out the logistics of getting me a car and a hotel room. And I was out of my mind, you know, I could barely pack. So he did all of this for me. My husband is wonderful. He is just wonderful, a wonderful person. And he made that happen for me. And I will never, you know, forget that. I will never be able to thank him for that. And I'm glad that you had the opportunity to get there just in time. You know, the same thing happened to my cousin with my grandmother. And I think that she was waiting for her because she had raised her along with her sister, and they were very, very close. And my grandmother was 96 years old. So my granduncle actually was 97 years old. He died right after his 97th birthday. So we're talking about two very, very old people here. And you know, I felt that my grandmother hung on until my cousin got there, and then she felt that it was okay to let go. So I really do believe that that's true.
I think that your poetry about all these issues, as you know, as a stranger coming in here, I can tell you that strangers will love this and will feel met. I also had two miscarriages, and I also take care of someone with severe dementia. And in fact, I've been going back and forth doing tasks related to that while I've been listening to you, that were tasks I didn't need to think. But and I just felt, listening to your poetry, that I felt met. I put it in the question, in the comment box. And I think people really want to feel met, that they're not alone. And what you said about miscarriages is, you know, really true. And I just think it's a great gift. It is hard to make yourself vulnerable that way. So it's obviously not a gift you have to give anyone, but I think you can certainly, if you decide it's what you want to give, I guess you have, I think you can certainly see it as a gift that you're giving strangers like me. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I'm sorry that you also shared in these experiences. And that's another issue that I felt. I didn't read some of the poems concerning my father because it's fresher, it's harder to read. But that's another thing that nobody talks about very much. That there are many, 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 many people out there caring for an elderly parent who is either physically or mentally disabled or both, and they're going through grieving before grieving is kind of
Mhm.
how I see it. You know, you can see that the end is coming and you can't do a thing about it, and you can see the person disappearing in front of you little by little, and I can't imagine anything more difficult than that, and having to witness that. But at the same time, you have this, it's for those people who are able to take care of someone like that, it is a gift. And I hope that you see that way, that you are able to help them even when they don't know that you're helping them, that you're able to help them towards their final end.
Yeah. The hardest is when my mother-in-law, we have to change her diaper or something like that, or we have to move her, and she screams at us that we're trying to kill her, or she doesn't want to take her pills. In the paranoia, that's really hard emotionally, because you feel like I'm doing all these things for you, and you're not even really the person I knew before, and you're just so angry. You resent me so much. That's hard, but you know, your poems address that too. The
It's
parent,
like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You know, you don't recognize sometimes the person that you love so much. You're like, where are they?
right?
And with my father, I felt very, very guilty sometimes because I couldn't control my anger. He would say things, well, like the poem that I read about the giving my daughter a piece of ham. I should have never reacted that way at that moment. He couldn't
You are
have known.
so human. My husband and I, we get mad sometimes. We try hard not to, but it's so human, and we all feel guilty. I mean, you know, it's like it's just all there in the human soup. But you're certainly no worse than anybody else.
The human soup. I like that. It is a soup.
It is.
Terrible bitter soup. Okay, everybody, are there any other questions? Let me see. Let me scroll through your comments. Oh, thank you so much.
How do we follow you? I mean, these other folks know you already, but how do I'm not on Instagram. Do you have like a Facebook web page? I am on Facebook.
I've got them all. I have a Facebook page, which
All
is,
right, I'll find you on Facebook and follow you there.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can either find me under my complete name or at Hobamok, which is my alter ego. It's from a 19th century novel, very complicated to explain, but it's a H-O-B as in boy, O-M-O-K. So Facebook,
Okay.
at Hobamok.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram. I am on Twitter. I have my own webpage, celiaLicetalvarez.com, which is where the majority of this information can be found, where everything sort of comes together. So I think that's the best place to go to keep track of what's going on with the book. And I'll be at the book fair tomorrow for if anyone is going to AWP, which I know that not everybody goes, but I'm super excited about it. It's the first time I'm going. So. Well, I want to thank all of you very, very much for being here. Like I said earlier, it's much more pleasurable to me to have a connection with each of you. I felt like I had the opportunity to talk to each one of you, which would not have happened if I had had a huge crowd. And I thank you for coming, and I thank you for all your comments, and I thank you for sharing your experiences and validating that fact that, you know, we all have these problems, and we all feel the need to have someone else say it's okay to feel this way. You know, I think that that's the essence of what I want this book to be about. And I think I felt that tonight with you. So thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing with us.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Well, okay, I think our time is about to run out. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.